Hey fans, this is LaTrina Robinson, your host of ESPNW's women's basketball podcast, Around the Rim, and we will have a live update from Rio. We also have Jewel Lloyd, the Seattle Storm guard, joining us, so make sure you go to the Listen tab on the ESPN app.
Good day. Coming up on the First Take podcast, LeBron speaks out on ownership and the way Jordan won his NBA title. Stay tuned for that conversation. Going to be good. Plus, questions continue after the alleged robbery of Ryan Lochte and 3 U.S. swimmers in Rio. We will react to the latest. In Arizona or Seattle, which NFL team will be best in the NFC West? That is the discussion. Let's get it started. Oh, hello, good people. Come on in. Welcome into First Take. Here with Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman. I am Molly Karen. What's up, gentlemen?
What's up? Looking very sharp as always.
Yeah,
Stephen
you
A.
are.
How are you? How's everything?
I'm good. How we doing?
Huh?
How we doing? You're good. You're always good.
We're starting off our show someplace. There are certain things in the world of sports that I think is sacrilegious.
Okay.
And we're about to get into it because I cannot believe what I read. I cannot believe what I heard.
All right.
Let us go.
Buckle up, people, because Stephen A. is about to unleash. You know who else is? Brick. Stephen A. returns as Brick, making another appearance on ABC's General Hospital later today. We will prepare you for Stephen A.'s return to daytime television. You are an actor with a SAG card. We love it. It's already DVR'd.
You know, well, you got to remember, we have to hurry up, do this show, because us actors, we have a lot of busy things to do.
Not just an actor, but he gets to play a gangster.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is my people.
You know he
call
loves
your,
that.
My people call your people.
Yeah.
You know.
We get it.
We get it together.
We get it
together.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to start with LeBron James, as Stephen alluded to. Since coming in the league, LeBron has been chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan as the GOAT. James had some interesting comments on the subject when he joined the Open Run podcast on the Uninterrupted Podcast Network.
I don't think MJ ever had a game 7 in the finals. And people say, well, he was able to close it out early, you know, and they act like he just, you know, did it all on his own and things of that nature. They forget the shot by Paxson on the left wing, you know.
I got burned by Bill Winnington a bunch of times.
You want to know the crazy thing? In that game, in that particular game in Phoenix, MJ didn't even have the ball in his hands. Pippen brought the ball up. Barkley went for the steal. Pippen threw it down to Horace Grant, and they got the defense, you know, because Barkley went for the gamble. They rotated to Horace Grant, and Horace Grant threw it to Paxson.
I was just watching this the other day.
MJ had nothing to do with that play.
Well, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours, my friend.
You know, I'm going to try to keep myself under control, because I don't want to find myself in a position where I get too out there. I got emotional about Melo because I'm a diehard Knicks fan. I don't want to get too emotional because I'm an MJ fan. But LeBron James, what the hell are you doing? Now, I understand. Let me be very, very clear. LeBron is a 3-time champion. LeBron is the greatest player in the world. I am sick and tired of throwing out qualifiers about how great he is and how he's the closest thing to perfection as a professional athlete in terms of on the court, off the court combination. Look, I mean, enough of the praise. Listen, I love LeBron James. I love what he means to the game. I love him as a person. I think he's a great guy. But this kind of stuff right here, Max Kellerman, is sacrilegious. It is blasphemous. It is disrespectful. And I have to say this. Now, I understand he threw all the qualifiers out there. And let's keep this in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, before I say my comments, I have a massive headache. I had to take some decongestant, the Sudafed decongestant. I got to drink the Gatorade for the electrolytes. I got water, tea coming. I'm not feeling very well today. But damn it, I'll find the energy to address what I'm about to address. See, this is the kind of stuff where he's trying to be slick, dare I say. LeBron James, who the hell doesn't know that you have teammates? I'm sorry. Is any player in NBA history, have you or you seen an NBA player in NBA history that's been on the court by themselves? Of course they haven't been. We all know you have
Kobe
teammates.
Bryant a couple times,
no,
but other than Kobe.
No. When he won 3, he had Shaq. and Robert Horry and Rick Fox and Derek Fisher and Brian Shaw and all of those boys. When Shaq was going, he had Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum. Had Derek Fisher again. I'm getting my headache again, but I'm going to work through it because let me tell you something right now. Scottie Pippen was a Hall of Famer. Is that not recognition? I think that's recognition. If you have a teammate who is a Hall of Famer, when we show highlights of the Chicago Bulls winning championships, did we not show John Paxson shooting the jump shot? Did we not show Steve Kerr hitting jump shots? Of course we did, LeBron James. What we're talking about here is arguably the greatest player who ever lived, really indisputable to most of us. 6 NBA Finals, 6 NBA championships, 6 NBA Finals MVPs without ever allowing a Game 7. Of course Jordan didn't defend 5 people by himself. Of course he didn't score 100-plus points in each game. Of course he had teammates. So all of this stuff that LeBron James is saying really makes no sense. It just smacks in the face of respect, because when you are great, the reason why Michael Jordan was so great was not only because he was clutch, not only because he was a closer, but before he was a closer in terms of championships, Max Kellerman, he was a killer, and you knew it. Larry Bird said God in shorts waxed us when Michael Jordan dropped 63. We all know that Scottie Pippen, even though he's a Hall of Famer, and he has profound respect from me because I do consider him one of the 50 greatest players, the bottom line is that migraine headache in that 7th game against the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals resonated. When you look at these other players, these role players, let me throw down a list. No disrespect to anybody I'm going to mention. They were in the NBA. They contributed to a championship team. I mean, no disrespect, but let me throw out the names. Will Perdue, Stacey King, Bill Cartwright, who could play before Ewing took over New York, all of these guys, okay, and Bill Winnington, and I mean, the list goes on, Luke Longley, the list goes on and on. What would those people have been without Michael Jordan? We all know the answer to that question. So when LeBron James becomes suddenly, professorial, and starts waxing eloquently about the nuances of basketball. This is exactly the kind of thing that led to the damn 4th finals losses. Because what I'm not all for, because we know that 2 of them really were not his fault at all. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if LeBron James had Michael Jordan's attitude, do they lose to Dallas? Can J.J. Barea guard him in the finals? Can Jason Terry guard him in the finals? No, it does not happen. It does not happen. So when we're talking about Michael Jordan, of course he had teammates. Of course he played with people. Of course, other guys contributed and got it done. Of course, unlike LeBron James, Michael Jordan had one specific coach he could rely upon throughout those 6 titles, because Phil Jackson was consistently his coach, whereas LeBron James had obstacles to climb, etc., etc. It just baffles my mind, Max Kellerman, why you're LeBron James and you would utter these words, because in the end, it doesn't matter how you slice it. I know he went out of his way to express that he meant no disrespect to Michael Jordan, and I get that, and in his heart of heart, I don't think he meant disrespect, but your words come across as, at the very least, lacking a true appreciation and being a bit duplicitous, because when you are a superstar and you are the man, you know what the hell we're talking about. Don't act like you don't know what the requirements are that come along with that. LeBron James, God bless him, because thank the good Lord he is the man in the NBA, because he makes my days better throughout the season. But you know better than making the kind of statement that he made. This is some blasphemous stuff here.
Like you, I love LeBron James. I love almost everything about him. Like, I love the kind of example he sets. I love the way he plays basketball. I love his game. I love the fact that he exists and we get to cover him, the whole thing. And what's happening here is LeBron's reach is exceeding his grasp. And that's a good thing. He's reaching farther than he can actually grasp, and that way he'll optimize what he has, because Michael Jordan is out of his grasp. Once you choke away 4 consecutive fourth quarters in the NBA Finals, the Michael Jordan ship has sailed. Now, what's happening? He's throwing rocks at the throne because he can't catch him any other way. He's trying to just tug Jordan down a little bit. Maybe then he can catch him. Talk about teammates. Like LeBron didn't have Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and now Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And, you know, there's this, people think that Jordan gets mythologized out of proportion. In fact, if anything, he becomes underrated over time. One of the favorite narratives in the NBA is Jordan had to learn how to win. He couldn't get by the Pistons. Nonsense. Jordan never played with another all-star in his career until Scottie Pippen came along. And the first time Scottie Pippen made an all-star team, they took the Pistons 7 games, and Pippen couldn't play in Game 7 because of the migraine, and they lost in 7 games. But Pippen wasn't in his prime yet. Check his PER, check all the advanced stats. Pippen reached all-star level, then the following year hit his prime. So the first time you give Jordan an all-star, he takes the defending champs 7 games and may have beaten them if that all-star was available in Game 7. And the very next season, that all-star hits Hall of Fame level, and Jordan never doesn't win the championship again in under 7 games. Now, that's all the kind of subjective championship credit stuff and all that. How about just objectively? Objectively. You know, LeBron James is really into advanced stats, into advanced metrics, using them to make his game better, to make it more efficient. He did it in Miami. He continues to do so. I mean, he uses these stats that were not available to Michael Jordan, even had Jordan been interested in those stats. So he has the advantage there in terms of how efficient he can be. And yet, according to all the most advanced metrics, Michael Jordan is greater on average in his career, like his PER, his average PER is higher than LeBron's. Wait a minute. That includes those seasons where he declined in Washington. LeBron hasn't even hit that phase yet. So that gap between Jordan on top and LeBron too is only going to widen.
But here is the reason I wanted to interject. Because while you're waxing so eloquently about these metrics and everything else, and you are on point, your biggest point is something I want my audience to gravitate to, Max Kellerman, and that is this. He's sort of tugging away at Jordan because you're justifying yourself, your 3-4 record in the NBA Finals. I'm here to tell you right now, 2 of those losses shouldn't be counted.
It's really 3-2. We agree.
Exactly. It's really 3-2 to me. It shouldn't be 3-4. LeBron James really should be 3-2 to me. I don't blame him for 2 of those Finals losses. But I would also like to add something here that I haven't heard anybody say. Does Michael Jordan with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh lose to the Dallas Mavericks?
No.
Hell no. That ain't happening. I can promise you that.
Does
Does Michael Jordan with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade lose to San Antonio that second go round? I don't believe so. I recall Michael Jordan and them going against Utah. Okay, didn't happen when you face Karl Malone and John Stockton. Second time around.
Try getting to a 7th game first.
Same results. And I think it's important. See, here's the thing. LeBron James has proven, first of all, Maverick Carter certainly getting in his ear, because Maverick Carter has you know, really elevated into a really astute marketing dude. Maverick Carter is a smart brother who, by the way, knows his damn basketball as well. And clearly he's in LeBron's ear in terms of marketing, because LeBron sounds brilliant here. I mean, did you think about this? You know, if you're sitting up there and chipping away and tugging away at Michael Jordan, you get to somehow gloss over the fact that you're 3-4 in the NBA Finals. Although in my mind, you're 3-2.
Right.
You know, with 2 asterisks, because you shouldn't have even been exposed to those situations. But the bottom line is this. You're not flawless in the NBA Finals. There's no crime in that. Doesn't take away from LeBron James' greatness. Doesn't take away from the fact that he's the greatest small forward in the history of basketball, as far as I'm concerned, and an iconic figure who should be not just respected, but revered. The problem is that now you're tugging at Jordan's cape, and you're not apologizing for it, because even though you're doing it, you won't admit that you're doing it, but none of us are fools. That's exactly what you're trying to do. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work, LeBron. You can't sit up there. Look, LeBron James played with a bunch of no-names when he went to the finals, the first go-round with Cleveland against San Antonio. We understand all of that. We get the part that you got to have teammates to win. But when you bring it up, in this particular instance, for Michael Jordan, what in God's name would be the purpose for going on a damn podcast to talk about how, you know, Michael Jordan had teammates? I mean, Steve Kerr shot. I mean, John Paxson shot the ball. Oh, what? Well, for what? Why?
If the question is basketball, the answer is Michael Jordan. Not because he's from your era, because there's a whole generation of kids now who's going to swear by LeBron James. Because if you're watching LeBron James, it's hard to imagine that anyone was ever better than that. But kids, I'm here to tell you there was someone better than that. And the record shows it, not just the finals and stuff like that. All your advanced metrics also show it.
Yes.
But everything that you just said also shows it. And when he brings up the, which shot did he bring up? The Paxson shot? Right. What about the Kerr shot that won the final? I mean, that was Jordan drawing the attention of the defense and then dishing. The idea that his teammates don't get credit when, as you mentioned, Scottie Pippen's considered a top 50 all-time great.
Top 50
Dennis Rodman's among the greatest defensive players,
and also a Hall of Famer.
And also a Hall of Famer.
Right.
It's absurd. This is another Jay-Z line. Don't bark up that tree will fall on you, LeBron. Just like, leave Jordan alone. Because, Stephen A., when all is said and done, I believe that LeBron James will go down as the greatest non-big man, meaning greatest non-center, who ever lived whose name wasn't Michael Jordan. I think he's going to go down in the end ahead of Magic, ahead of Bird, ahead of Kobe. I think he'll be number one of all the non-centers not named Michael Jordan. But the Jordan ship is sailed.
But here's the problem, and let's mention Kobe in that breath. Because Kobe's all-around game per se, even though Kobe would argue differently, because Kobe would tell you the different coaches he had to play against. He had to play the point guard spot. You know, he had to do a lot of different things as well. Kobe is not just some scoring machine, and Kobe could play some defense as well. Kobe would make the argument in his favor in that regard. Here is where I would make the argument in favor of Kobe. Not about skill set, because we see the all-around, the physical specimen, and the presence that LeBron James had. Here's where Kobe was rightfully mentioned as the heir apparent to Michael Jordan. What LeBron James has matured into, Kobe and MJ came in the league with that attitude. This is the reason why we're debating this, the reason why we're having a discussion about this. What everyone out there needs to understand is that LeBron James, once again, do you know what LeBron James is in this article, in that podcast? He's the LeBron James before he ever won his first title that was at the All-Star game that had an opportunity to go one-on-one against Kobe and instead tried to pass the damn ball to Dwayne Wade.
And Kobe's like shrugging, like, what are you doing?
No, Kobe, Dwayne Wade, Melo, everybody was getting in his face. What you doing? You pass the ball for. Even in an exhibition game, he's trying to make the right play instead of stepping up and saying, I'm the man, I'm going to do this. The second LeBron James adopted that mentality, he became a champion.
By the way,
so that means Jordan and Kobe had a champion's mentality. LeBron had to grow to that point.
And yet
That's
still,
the
I still think LeBron's going to probably wind up ahead of everyone but Jordan, who's not a center. Quickly,
Probably.
we bring up the fact that you and I consider him 3-2 in the finals, not 3-4. I think just to give LeBron credit, it goes beyond that. Even though he lost 2 years ago to the Warriors, not only is that shouldn't that be considered a loss, that's one of the greatest finals performances of all time. To me, he's 3-2, but the asterisk is not that two of them are taken out. It's that he deserves extra credit for the one that we don't even count as a loss. That was an absurd performance.
Aaron Rodgers spoke out yesterday on the Jim Rome Show about the position that players are in against the league and Roger Goodell. Terrell Suggs earlier today had some strong comments on that subject, and he shared them with Mike and Mike.
From our perspective, he got his favorites, and he's got the kind of guys he likes to talk to and hang out with and just, kind of chop it up with. But a lot of us ain't those guys. A lot of us ain't under center making $20 million a year. So we're not his favorite.
If that is the case, we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because we had the opportunity in the CBA to make some legitimate changes to that. And I think there's probably too much pressure to come back to a deal when we had all the power on our side. And, that was something that we should have had negotiated into the CBA, because there shouldn't be someone who's the judge, jury, and executioner.
Stephen A., what's going on here?
Well, what's going on here is a couple of things. When you look at Terrell Suggs, he's basically saying that, Roger Goodell, he ain't down with the brothers. I mean, there's just no, I mean, that's the way I interpreted it. Now, I've interviewed and spoken to Terrell Suggs on several occasions. I don't know him that well, obviously. So I can't definitively say what he meant, but I can tell you how it came across to me. Mm-hmm. Roger Goodell ain't too down with the brothers. That's what he's saying. Taking it a step further, let's understand a couple of things. As it pertains to what Aaron Rodgers had to say, I think he's absolutely right. He had an opportunity to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement. I would remind everybody that with the collective bargaining agreement, if I recall correctly, there was one standout. There was one person that voted against agreeing to the collective bargaining agreement. And that person would happen to be Ryan Clark, our colleague here at ESPN. As far as I'm concerned, he is the only person that has a gripe. Everybody else should shut the hell up. I don't want to hear it. It is what it is, because even if you were to agree to the deal, did you have to do 10 years? What happened to 5? Who signs a 10-year deal? Do you realize how much life changes in a decade? But you're the NBA and you're the NFL Players Association. You agreed to a 10-year deal. Now, this is not from me. This is from a number of people familiar with collective bargaining negotiations, experts on it, quite frankly. They believe that the NFL Players Association got taken to school, and that all of this stuff, these retroactive actions against the league, are a product of you really getting you pushed around at the negotiating table, getting a deal that wasn't deemed great for the players, and now you're trying to revisit it every chance you get. I don't know all the particulars, even though I know my collective bargaining. Bottom line is that I'm just going to look at it at that. That's for the Players Association to answer. When it comes to T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs, what I would say is, in terms of his direct comments about Roger Goodell, so what? Listen, this notion that I'm some fan of Roger Goodell's. I do like Roger Goodell in terms of the job that he's done overall. He's made mistakes, but I think by and large, I don't mind him at all. I really, really don't. And what I'm saying, but I don't know the man. I've never even met the man, you know. I would tell you this. Roger Goodell, to me, plays by big boy rules. And I think we all need to recognize what those big boy rules are. Those with the gold make the rules. That's the golden rule. Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the National Football League, which is the #1 sport in America. They're making billions of dollars annually, and that is that. And it's time that a lot of these NFL players, as far as I'm concerned, put on their big boy pants and start whining about stuff that you can't change until the next collective bargaining negotiations come around. Damian Woody yesterday got a bit heated with me. That's my big boy. I mean, listen, we ain't going to fight. We know I don't want to commit suicide here. So it's not all I was going to do was talk back to him. That's about all I could do against Damian Woody. But that's my man. That's my brother right there. But let's be clear. He get upset because his whole thing was, you know what, it's not right. Why should Roger Goodell just get to do what he wants to do? We're just supposed to march up to the commissioner's office and do X, Y, and Z. Well, if it's your boss, yeah. I know it's hard, but when we sit up here and we talk about being role models, when we talk about professional athletes having an impact on younger minds and beyond, understand that you're setting an example. Don't set the example that's going to lead somebody down a road to ruin. If you want to sit up there, ladies and gentlemen, and want to follow the NFL players and don't want to listen to your boss and want to stick out your chest and you want to be defiant, you go right ahead and watch where it gets you, because I assure you it's not going to get you where it'll get them in some instances. It's just not wise. Of course, Roger Goodell is going to play favorites with his big money players. You know why? Because they're big money players, which means they make big money for the NFL. It's that simple. Grow up and get over it, because it's the real world.
Okay. It's so much more complex than that. You're so wrong, Stephen A.
Right.
Now, let's start with who Goodell knows and who he doesn't know. Okay. I understand you could hear it as a racial thing, maybe, or take it that way, or interpret that Terrell Suggs meant it that way. But if you're the commissioner of the league, and there are 2,500 players, give or take, that you need to know, you can't know them all. You know the quarterbacks. You may know some union reps. You may know some stars here and there, and, you know, the owners and the coaches. I mean, that's only so many people you can know and be intimately familiar with. I'm not blaming Roger Goodell for that. But in terms of what Aaron Rodgers said, he said, if that's the case, in other words, if Goodell has these powers, then we should have done a better job collective bargaining. Now, let's get to the collective bargaining agreement. Stephen A., I totally agree with you about this. They got rolled. The union got stomped out by the NFL in that agreement. It is, I mean, they rolled back the percentage of the money that the players keep. They rolled it back from 57 to 50%. They got everything they wanted, essentially, the NFL. Now, why is that? Because they basically act as a monopoly, de facto monopoly. I mean, in the sense that if you're one of the best football players in the world and you want to make a lot of money, there's only one place to get rich playing football, and that's the NFL. Mm-hmm. They've absorbed everybody else and crowded out the competition everywhere else, so you got to deal with them. And then because there are relatively few guaranteed contracts in the NFL, the players' union isn't that strong. The coffers aren't that deep. They don't have the kind of money to absorb a long-term lockout. Many of the players don't. And so they will vote and they will exert pressure to just get a deal done. But in this case, Stephen A., part of the collective bargaining agreement in which we both agree they got rolled, they've been had. They didn't do a good enough job negotiating. But part of it is that Goodell, in fact, does not have the power to do this, and that's why they want to challenge it. In other words, yeah, we did a bad job, but one of the things we were able to get in this deal, at least as it relates to Harrison and the PED guys, or the accusations from the Al Jazeera report, one of the things we were able to get is you can't just force us to come in and start talking before you've gathered evidence. At least we got that. And that's not good enough for Goodell and them. They're like, no, we're going to do that anyway. So while I agree with you, the NFL won the CBA, no question. Goodell is the boss, yes. They are not only the biggest sports machine in this country, they're the biggest entertainment entity in this country, if not in the world. A 15 to what is it, almost $20 billion a year industry now. It's insane. But that doesn't mean that the players don't have the right to do what they're doing, according to the CBA.
I sincerely hope that the vast majority of players, and particularly young minds out there, are not listening to you, because they won't remain employed very, very long. Let's talk about this on a couple of levels. First things first, let me just get this out the way, Molly and Max, as an aside. I was not bringing up race. I'm thinking that Terrell Suggs, there are numerous NFL players who have brought up race when complaining about Roger Goodell and the muscle, the strong arm of the NFL. I remember players in the past mentioning the word slavery. I was the one who debunked all of that, saying that's nonsense. Stop it. It's big. Put on your big boy pants. This is about business.
Your inference from what he said.
I'm just saying that. That's number one. Number two, and the most important point. You see, let's think about this. Tom Brady is a superstar. Tom Brady may be the greatest quarterback of the modern day era. Yep. Tom Brady is a 4-time Super Bowl champion. Good looks, GQ, supermodel wife, still haven't gotten over the runway for the start of the Olympics.
She worked it.
She worked it. Woo, she worked it. All of that stuff, this is Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets associated with all of this. And Goodell came after that man. Goodell did not come after that man, Max Kellerman. Even with the Ted Wells investigation, it was not because of that. There were so many holes in that Ted Wells investigation to put Swiss cheese to shame. Okay, here's what happened. How dare Tom Brady challenge the authority of the NFL? That is what this is about. That is what the fight is about. The NFL Players Association. I respect DeMaurice Smith. I like him. I'm not down with talking to Atala as his deputy that much, but DeMaurice Smith can talk to me any day of the week. Let me be clear. I respect this man. I like him. I think he's an astute mind. My only issue with him is that he has not mesh the lines, and he continues to separate as wide as the ocean labor negotiations with labor relations. He hasn't intertwined them at all. You have to engage in labor relations. You cannot be at odds with the strong arm of the law all the time where you're butting heads and butting heads and butting heads on everything, and everything becomes a legal issue, because by and large, when it all comes down to it, you're going to end up losing.
I appreciate
and y'all
that
are not
point.
bringing that up.
I appreciate that point. There's something, of course, to that. Basic relationships are important to keep as good as possible. However, the basic premise of your argument, the very pragmatic attitude that because you are very, very likely to lose, in your opinion, you shouldn't fight. Well, in that case, nothing ever gets done. You have to be willing to fight sometimes, even when the odds are against you.
But see, here's where, and I'm going to get a little personal here. Here's where you coming across as a bit phony, Max Kellerman. Because, Max Kellerman, let me tell you something right now. You will sit up there, and contrary to what people might believe, you could be as combative as anybody. But when it comes to work, you cultivate relationships.
Yes.
You talk to people all the time. And if John Skipper called you and said, I need you in my office, you're not going to go like this. Well, tell me why first.
Yeah,
you know what you're going to do? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to say when. Now, even though you love L.A., if Bob Iger decided that he was going to be in Utah during a blizzard, and he said, Max Kellerman, I need you to get your behind to Utah, you'll find out when you get here how much you want to make a bet you on the phone, whether it's your manager or the travel agent or whatever. You're going to get your behind out there. Why? Because the boss called you. That is the bottom line.
Yeah, number one, you're right. Number two, it's because we got good commissioners at ESPN.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
We have commissioners that we're not at odds with.
Wait a minute. Oh, trust me.
Okay.
I've always had moments where I'm at odds with anybody, okay? But when the boss calls, I'm going to come and talk to him. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to sign papers and do
in this case,
what they
he's
say.
not the boss.
Wait a minute.
He's acting as law enforcement, not the boss.
Well, that's what I mean by the boss.
Well, okay, but as I said yesterday, if the cops say we want you to answer questions, and they start rattling handcuffs to intimidate you, you can say time out. No, am I under arrest or not?
Wait a minute.
I got rights.
Hold on, time out. You might do that unless you're fearful of getting shot. Then you're going to sit up there. You know what you're going to do? I need to live another day. Let me chill. That's what you're going to do. Why? Because it's the intelligent thing to do. We are sitting up here, sticking our chest out and advising people to be unintelligent, stick out their chest.
You may have said it would have been intelligent. You might have said what? You might have said it would have been intelligent for Muhammad Ali just to take the step forward in the draft, and they would have taken care of him, and he'd have been okay, and he wouldn't have lost 4 years of his career. But the reason we remember Muhammad Ali today is not only because he beat Sonny Liston and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and everyone, but because he said to the government of the United States,
ask Muhammad Ali and his family what he suffered.
Sure.
And what he suffered.
And then ask them if it was worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it now, but at the time, how was he feeling?
I don't know if this is the same type of cause we have right here.
You're saying it takes courage.
I don't know. This is a fair comparison.
Because you're bringing up Muhammad Ali. I'm bringing up James Harrison.
It's not Muhammad Ali.
We're going PEDs. We're going a whole other issue.
James Harrison also said he come to my house.
Stay focused, people.
Hey, baseball fans, I'm Keith Law. On the latest Baseball Tonight podcast, Jerry Krasnick and I talk about the surging Dodgers and Adrian Gonzalez's interesting Hall of Fame case. Check it out in the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
Meanwhile, many expect the NFC West to be a dogfight between the Seahawks and the Cardinals this season. Well, if ESPN.com's power rankings are any indication of the battle to come, we should all buckle up. Leading the pack is Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, followed by Carson Palmer's Cardinals at 2. Now, the Cardinals won the division in 2015, but Russell Wilson says this is the most talented team he's been a part of since being in Seattle, including his Super Bowl winning team in 2013. So the question, gentlemen, Max, we'll start with you, is who wins the NFC West, the Hawks or the Cards?
The answer is the Seattle Seahawks. And I know that the Cardinals are the in fashion, in vogue pick right now as the #1 best team, and I get it. Bruce Arians done a tremendous job. They have weapons everywhere, both sides of the ball. They looked even last year to be the most well-rounded team in the NFL.
Don't try to hedge your bets. Talk about your Seattle Seahawks, since you're so bold.
I'm going to talk about it.
So talk about your Seattle Seahawks. Lead the Cardinals to me.
Defense.
Yep.
Last year. Seattle Seahawks second in total defense, Arizona 5th.
Yep.
Oh, David Johnson, everyone's talking about, and they had depth at running back, too.
That
Rushing last year. Seattle Seahawks 3rd, Arizona 8th. And by the way, Rawls is a bad man, Stephen A.
He's
good.
He's good.
Pete Carroll, between him and Bruce Arians, 2 tremendous coaches. Who are you going to take? Who are you going to take if you have to take one? You're going to take Pete Carroll. Cam Chancellor's not going to miss the first 2 weeks of the season. Both losses last season for Seattle. Make them 2 games better, potentially. Jimmy Graham is going to be integrated into the offense. Remember, they traded Max Unger for him. It hurt the offensive line. They had a year to get over that. They now have what you would think would be an elite, at least pass-catching tight end back in that offense. And then finally, and most importantly, Stephen A., they got the demonstrably better and clearly better quarterback. Russell Wilson is obviously and clearly better than Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer will take those shots down the field. He's a gunslinger. He'll take risks. Russell Wilson will be more effective. He's more conservative with the ball, yes. He's much more mobile. He is the better third down quarterback. He's the guy you'd want with the ball in his hand and the game on the line consistently throughout his career, coming through with huge clutch plays. Compare that to how Carson Palmer fared with the money on the line last year in the playoffs. And even at receiver, where you say John Brown, like that's a clear advantage. In fact, Russell Wilson to Doug Baldwin is probably the most underrated tandem in the NFL. Doug Baldwin is a baller. They don't just, for whatever reason, because Pete Carroll cares, I guess, more about winning games than racking up stats. I'm not saying Bruce Arians is trying to rack up stats, but Baldwin really is not used like the level of talent and ability and performance he's demonstrated, especially over the last couple of years. I think where there's an edge, this goes to Seattle. And I'm comfortable saying Seattle Seahawks better than the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, I'm not going to insult that pick, but what I'm going to tell you is that Arizona is no joke. Carson Palmer wet the bed in the playoffs, 6 turnovers, 4 interceptions. He was god-awful. Even though his thumb was injured, the bottom line is it was a pathetic performance, and it ruined an otherwise tremendous season on his part. I think Arizona's a question mark at the tight end slot because you need somebody to throw the ball to over the middle, which is not to say that you can't do that. The problem is, most importantly, with anything else, I mean, you got Darren Fells, who's got a good tight end, and he could do some things. The problem is Carson Palmer loves to throw the ball deep, and he's going to go anybody in the slot. It's going to be in the slot to Larry Fitzgerald. But John Brown is no joke. Michael Floyd is no joke. They can really ball. And David Johnson, you know how I feel about him. Somebody grabbed him during fantasy football, but we'll talk about that another day. In the end, when you consider the fact that he's a dual threat out of the backfield, running the football and catching it as a good receiver, I think their offense with Bruce Arians, pulling the strings, has an opportunity to be high-powered. Questions on your offensive line, questions at your tight end spot, but I think both of those issues are neutralized by the dual threat that is David Johnson, combined with Larry Fitzgerald being in the slot and having wideouts who are deep threats. So when I look at it from that perspective, with Bruce Arians coaching, and I think Arizona's defense is going to be relatively decent with Calais Campbell and a crew, especially with the Honey Badger being back, with Patrick Patterson and back there with him in the secondary, Jones. And you got Chandler Jones. I'm sorry, and then they got Kim Dichie. I'm a fan of his. I love Kim Dichie. I loved him more than Joey Bosa. He just had some troubles off the field that hurt him. I look at Seattle and I look at their defense, and I know their defense is elite. It's big time. But look at some of these losses. You got Bruce Irvin gone. You got Mebane gone. You got Russell Okung gone. I mean, I look at those. Those are pivotal losses. I think that Seattle will make the playoffs. I think one could make the argument that they will excel later on in the season. But in terms of the regular season, to answer the direct question as to who's going to win the NFC West, I believe it's going to be Arizona again. I think Seattle will be a wild card, and they may make some noise in the playoffs. But during the regular season, I think that Arizona is going to squeeze out. They probably get them by just one game, but I think they're going to win.
When you sling it around like Carson Palmer, especially down the field, and don't always seem to make judicious decisions with the ball, and no one seems to be better at that, by the way, than Russell Wilson, you're going to get picked. Casey Joyner, the football scientist, wrote about this in his fantasy draft guide. Carson Palmer's picks could go way up any given year. That could happen the way he throws the ball down the field. Unlikely with Russell Wilson, who, by the way, when people talk about, and I've talked about it a lot, Cam Newton in the second half of last year, Tom Brady throughout most of last year, especially through two-thirds of the season, Aaron Rodgers, of course, when he has weapons available. In fact, the best football player on earth over the second half of last season was Russell Wilson. Like, for some reason, the perception of him still hasn't fully caught up to the reality of him, because he was considered a game manager who was mobile. But in fact, even then, he was a really good game manager who was big on third down, which is exactly what you want. And then he took his game to the next level.
But the part that you're missing, Max, is that even though he's better than a game manager, I consider Russell Wilson an all-pro. I consider him to be a tier 1 player. I think he's big time. Here's the problem. Your defense is so elite, you can afford as an offense to be relatively conservative, which at times they appear to be. Now, beast mode being gone, key is going to be Rawls, because if Rawls is not running the football well enough, that's going to put more pressure on Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson will get it done. He will close the deal more often than not. And we know that about him. The flip side is if you're Pete Carroll and those boys, because you don't want to sit up there and put Russell Wilson in any kind of precarious position, you'll lean on a defense which will make your offense relatively methodical and conservative. And as a result, it might cost you a couple of games during the regular season. During the playoffs, you'll be able to shine. But during the regular season, Bruce Arians is going to let it fly. And they're going to go for it. More so than Seattle, which is why I give them the edge in the regular season.
Don't forget those first 2 weeks, close games that they lost without Cam Chancellor. That ain't happening this year.
Well, they struggled because they were missing a couple.
Yeah, but you also got to remember, it wasn't just because Cam Chancellor was gone. Even when they came back, there was a couple of games they lost. You're talking about chemistry, continuity, because people want new contracts, because everybody wants to shine. Sometimes you got locker room issues in Seattle.
You give me,
they get it together,
among comparable teams, you give me the team with the better coach and better quarterback, Seattle.
Both teams are so stacked, but that Panthers game is still in my mind when
it was bad, but that was
in
the playoffs, not regular season.
Of course. King James, LeBron, he already has 4 MVPs. He's a 3-time NBA champion. He's an actor. He's a partner in Clutch Sports Agency. He's a philanthropist. He's a brand ambassador with Nike, Sprite, Samsung, Kia, McDonald's. I'm sure that I'm missing something. And he told the Open Run podcast that he wants to have a big part in a franchise when his playing days are over. Take a listen.
I feel like my brain is, as far as the game of basketball, is unique, and you know, I would love to continue to give my my knowledge to the game, and I would love to be, you know, a part of a franchise, if not at the top. You know, one of my dream is to actually own a team. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, I don't need to have fully hands-on. You know, if I'm fortunate enough to own a team, then I'm gonna hire the best GM and president that I can. Right. But I feel like I got a good eye for not only talent, because we all see a lot of talent, but the things that make the talent, the chemistry. Yeah, the chemistry. What type of guy he is, his work ethic, his passion, his you know, the basketball IQ side of things. Because you know, talent only goes so far.
LeBron with his sights set on ownership. I like his ambition, but Stephen A., should he be talking about ownership right now?
Yes, he should. Absolutely. It's the best time. And I'm going to say something on that. I might feel his comments about Michael Jordan as sacrilegious and blasphemous, but that's really about all you can say about LeBron James. I think I'm going to say something that I don't think has ever been said. I think when it comes to the National Basketball Association and all of professional sports, I genuinely believe in my heart 2 people were owed or are owed ownership of a franchise. One was Michael Jordan. The other is LeBron James. You could throw Magic in there if you want to. That's fine. But Magic and Bird, the combination of the two, elevating the popularity of the sport, bringing the NBA into mainstream, that's entirely different than the global stratosphere. Michael Jordan transcended the sport too, and then LeBron James taking it to another level the way he has from a business perspective. When LeBron James, when you look at him, the pressure that was put on him, the way he's been in the public eye since he was 17 years of age on the cover of Sports Illustrated, the expectations that were placed on his shoulders, how from his very first game going up against the Sacramento Kings when he dropped 25 straight out of high school to what he has evolved into. It's not just about the 3 championships or anything like that. It is the fact that for 13 years, pretty much LeBron James, with the exception of the Kobe years, LeBron James was the story in the NBA, at the very least for the last 7. And he has carried that baton in exemplary fashion. You can never question his effort. You can never question his commitment to excellence. You can question his accomplishments, but you can't question how badly he wanted it. You can question a lot of different things. And then to step off the court and to carry the brand of the NBA on his shoulders the way that he has. If anybody in the modern day era deserves an opportunity to own an NBA franchise, it is LeBron James. These owners, Michael Jordan is the only black individual in the room in terms of the owners in the league's board of governors. He's the only guy. LeBron James needs to be that guy. LeBron James was the guy that first spoke out about how Donald Sterling needed to go. LeBron James is the one that went about the business of globalizing his brand as exceptionally well as he has. He is the guy that constantly preaches about business. He conducts himself in exemplary fashion. He never gets into any trouble or anything like this. There is no reason on God's green earth for the NBA fraternity to keep LeBron James out of ownership. I believe that one of the reasons that LeBron James is back is because one day he will own the Cavs, either as part owner or as full owner when Dan Gilbert decides to take his ownership talents to Detroit, because that's where he's from and that's what he really cares about, okay? But LeBron James is on course to be an owner in the NBA. He deserves it, and not only should we speak out in support of it, we should damn near insist that any time that an ownership position opens up, the moment LeBron James retires, if he wants an ownership stake, he should be allowed to have it, because that is how much he has meant to the NBA, and he deserves to be in that room with those owners.
He's, first of all, about LeBron James, the person. He's 1 in 7 billion as a player. 7 billion people on earth. He's the best at what he does, and basically every tall person in the world, practically I could say that and not be hyperbolic, is trying to play in the NBA. It's super competitive, and he's number 1 out of 7 billion people on earth. But so often with athletes, we also want them to be 1 out of 1 million people. You know, not only be this extraordinary athlete and beat all those odds, but also be a better person than most of us are capable of being. In LeBron's case, he seems to have done it. He's a 1 in 7 billion athlete, and he's a 1 in a million person.
He really is.
He took his day ones with him too.
He really
boys.
No question. You got if you have a problem with LeBron James, the man, unless it's something I can't. I mean, I think it. I can't imagine what it could be. He has a chance to be a better owner than Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan hasn't set the bar very high there. And LeBron James, when you look at his personality, from the time he was in high school, he's used his talents to elevate those around him. Michael Jordan, his talent, he always used to smash those around him. Even his Hall of Fame speech, he's taking shots at everyone, his kids, his former teammates, coaches. They're all there to honor him, and he's so competitive, it's like toxically competitive, which is why he's the greatest player ever, and he's using it as a cudgel, you know, to smash everybody, whereas LeBron has always, and Kobe Bryant was the same way as Michael Jordan. LeBron's used his gifts to always elevate everybody around him. I think that bodes well for him as an owner. But you mentioned there's only, at the moment, 1 African-American owner in the NBA. LeBron would be the second. There is something that doesn't sit well with me, that both of them happen to be the greatest players of their era, like maybe the best and second best player ever. So the only, in a league that is majority African-American, there are only 2 African-American owners, and in order to get there, each had to be the greatest player anyone has ever seen. There's something that's not, it's like the only path to ownership is you better be amazing with a basketball.
Let me say this. Let's be fair to the NBA. First, on 2 points. First things first, Bob Johnson was the first.
Yep.
Larry Bird and his group was Bob Johnson's competition. Larry Bird walked in there with 13 other people, sat up there talking about, all right, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to get this money together. They were a little short, but they had the money. They were going to get the money, and they were going to get there with their group, and they were going to give it to the NBA so they could hit the Charlotte franchise. Bob Johnson walked in a little while later. This is according to my sources. They gave me some insight on this. Bob Johnson walked in there. Jerry Colangelo, the great Jerry Colangelo, got him in the room. You know, they both got Illinois roots. And Jerry Colangelo got him in the room, and Bob Johnson walked in there and said, I appreciate everything about Larry Bird. Very special man. Great player. We love him. But last time I checked, this was a financial issue here. And here is my financial portfolio. And it was worth in excess of $1.7 billion because of his days owning BET. Who do I cut the $300 million check to? That's how it goes. The NBA did not sit up there and say, hold on. NBA did not sit up there and say, we don't want this black person up in there. They said, huh? $300 million? Come on in.
Come on in, green person.
So let's be clear. Yeah. Let's be clear. Not only did the NBA do that, they're the only ones who did do it.
I'm not suggesting that it's David Stern or Adam Silver.
I know you're not suggesting anything like that. I'm just saying that it's important to point out that the NBA is the one sport who has done it. Major League Baseball hasn't done it. National Hockey League hasn't done it. National Football League hasn't done it. Where's the black ownership with those leagues? So if we're going to talk about them, let's get a Richard Lapchick on here to talk about fairness. Let's get a Richard Lapchick here, you know, with his Sports Institute. Let's get him on here to talk about the paucity of owners, the paucity of executives, etc. It's not to say that the NBA can't do better, but David Stern and now Adam Silver and the NBA have done an exemplary job in comparison. Could they do better? You're damn right. They all could do better. But in comparison to the other leagues, there's nothing to discuss.
Yeah,
there's nothing to discuss.
I'm glad you made that point. What doesn't sit right with it, for me, is not a reflection of the NBA. It's the reverberations of systemic inequality, where per capita there's less wealth among black people, etc.
Sure.
In other words, we are making progress, but we're not there yet, because even as a percentage of the population, you're going to find fewer African-American billionaires, for example. So what doesn't sit right with it about me, it's that the path, it's not the path specifically to NBA ownership, but let's just call it ownership of a major American sports franchise seems to be, you have to be a player, and you have to be the greatest ever, and then you had to front the group, and that's how you get kissed in.
But in fairness to the leagues, let's also, as a black community, look at ourselves. Karen Hunter, a dear friend of mine, hosts her own radio show on Sirius XM, Urban View Channel 126, every weekday. Every week, she's screaming at the black community. She is a black woman, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and a black woman. Every day, she's screaming at the black community how our spending power as a community exceeds $1.3 trillion. So we're spending, but what are we spending it on? How are we pooling our resources? How are we positioning ourselves as a community to position ourselves to get into a place where we could ultimately own a team? So we can't look at white America because of how we handle our business and blame them for keeping us out. Now, if you have the money and you're standing at the front door, which has been the case with some of us, and we are not allowed in, that is an entirely different argument than if we don't have the financial portfolio because we haven't accumulated our resources in appropriate fashion to gather ownership. We have to hold some level of culpability ourselves instead of always looking at somebody else to blame.
But I think we all agree LeBron would be a fantastic owner and has the potential to be phenomenal, and we're all on board with that.
And he deserves it.
With 3 American swimmers being kept in Brazil following allegations they were robbed, authorities have told ABC of a video showing a U.S. swimmer breaking down a gas station restroom door and fighting a security guard. Ryan Lochte, the most high-profile victim, in Sunday morning's alleged robbery, acknowledged Wednesday that he had the other swimmers were in a taxi at a gas station when armed men posing as police officers robbed them. The reports of a new video come after U.S. swimmers Jack Conger and Gunnar Bentz were stopped from leaving on a flight Wednesday night as authorities investigate the alleged robbery. Brazilian authorities said in a statement Thursday that the swimmers were taken off the airplane. Check out the New York Post front page headline today, Watergate, Max Kellerman.
Yep.
What is your latest reaction to this?
Well, first of all, right from the beginning, these reports, every report you read, at least that I read, was talking about skepticism with which these allegations were met. So there was skepticism, at least on the part of, the authorities in Brazil, who are understandably sensitive about their reputation right now as it relates to crime and the poverty and the favelas and the fact that it's been, a lot of the reports that have come out.
Favelas.
Like the slums in Brazil.
Where they literally covered with sheets.
Yeah. So that's called favelas?
Yeah, favelas. Yeah.
Got it.
So they're on the one hand, the Olympic Games and the Olympic Village and all this stuff, very nice and first world, and then over here, it looks like developing world in desperate circumstances. And I'm sure that Brazil is embarrassed by this and sensitive to the idea that it would be the inequality and the fact that it might be unsafe for the athletes, etc. So, but right away you heard skepticism associated with the claim. Now, Lochte first reports it on Instagram. Let's presume for a second that it's a lie. Let's just assume that that's true. There's a reason to be skeptical, and he made it up because he wants to cover up some kind of personal behavior that he doesn't want to be known, or he's in some other kind of situation that he doesn't want to be made public. That's not a crime. You can claim something. You can invent a bad guy who stuck you up and took your money. That's not a crime. That's fine. You can enter and leave any country you want as an American citizen. You should be able to anyway. Because you made something, that's fine. But once you give statements to an official, to a law enforcement official, which apparently happened because this is according to police now in Brazil, now you're in trouble. Now, if you gave false testimony, now you're in trouble. Now, the judge who said, not so fast, don't get on the plane, who gave permission for law enforcement to detain them, sees inconsistencies in a couple of the swimmers' testimony. Okay, I mean, I guess you can bring them in to talk to them more if they've given these statements to officials, Stephen A., but memory is imperfect, and you can ask two different people about an incident that did take place, and there may be some inconsistencies, and even someone, when asked to clarify, may say, oh, the gun was pointed at my head. No, it wasn't. Actually, it was just pointed at me. Those things can change. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. But I understand, I guess the upshot is I understand why Brazilian officials would be very sensitive to this issue. And I understand if you give a statement to law enforcement and they have reason to believe it's a false statement, they may want to talk to you some more. But as an American citizen, the fact that some of our athletes go to another country to compete, and based on their claim, whether true or not, that they were stuck up, they can be detained, I don't like it. I just don't like it.
I don't like it either. I'm in no position to wax eloquently about this because I haven't watched that much of the Olympics. I have been of the mindset, just like you are about the name Redskins, I am about the Olympians being there in attendance. I don't like it. There's been so many things that were reported prior to folks arriving there. I've spoken to several journalists who have been there who cannot wait to get back to the States. My God, some of the things that they have been subjected to. Having said all of that, here's where it gets a bit tricky. Like you said, once you give a statement to the authorities, then all of a sudden all bets are off. What I would modify that statement with is by saying this. That would be in the United States of America. Who the hell knows what it is in Brazil? Obviously, there were security issues. We had security issues. We had corrupt politicians. We've got a country like Brazil that shares its borders with 10 different other countries. I mean, you've got all of those issues going on. You've got water, the equivalent of raw sewage, but you want to stick out your chest and act like you're the paragons of virtue. How dare anybody accuse us of wrongdoing, to accuse somebody of feigning to be cops to rob somebody in the street as if it is beyond the realm of comprehension. I don't like this at all. I think government intervention is necessary in terms of, excuse me, let those athletes go, give them back their passport, let them get on a plane and get the hell back to the United States of America. They didn't harm anybody. They didn't rob anybody. Chances are they were robbed, and even if they weren't, what's the mistake? That you lied about being robbed? I mean, because they didn't say police officers robbed us. They said people faking themselves or feigning themselves as police officers robbed us. So that's no indictment against law enforcement officials in Brazil. Now, had you said you had been robbed by the police, then that is a different matter entirely, because now you're questioning law enforcement officials, and that's a problem. But if you're saying people faked being police officers, and then we found out they they were fake, and obviously they weren't police officers, but we got robbed. I'm sorry, not that I'm condoning somebody lying, condoning somebody making up a story or anything like that, because that would be wrong. The flip side, however, is that, again, you saying that you were robbed, but you're not putting it on police officers. What is their problem? Let the American citizens go. Let them come back home. And if I'm the United States of America, I'm calling the embassy there and I'm saying, excuse me, let them come home. Who did they harm? Who did they bother? You're trying to use them for public relations. We're not going to have
That's the key. That's the key. The fact that Brazil is facing a PR problem, which is largely justified because of the conditions right now. And the question as to whether they should even hold the Olympics, that's not something made up. Now, I understand where they're sensitive because they're like, look, we're already fighting all of this. And we don't need made-up allegations on top of it. And I'm very sorry if you got your feelings hurt in a kind of, even if it was a made-up situation and now you have bad PR. Boy, you better have a damn good reason to detain, even for a moment, American citizens who are trying to go home, period.
You're lucky they're there. Because, again, I'm going to repeat this again.
Scary.
Ladies and gentlemen, they shared their borders with 10 different countries at a time when Al-Qaeda exists, ISIS exists, etc. You've got water, the equivalent of raw sewage, and you got events going on up in there. It looks nasty some of the time. You know, the reports over there have been disastrous.
Don't forget Zika.
The Zika virus, okay? You know, you got people, I mean, they distributed millions of condoms for crying out loud. All right? You got all of this going on. It's just the truth. I'm not being X-rated here. It's a fact. So the point that I'm trying to make is all of that into consideration, we shouldn't even be there. I hate the fact that any Olympian is over in Brazil. The event should have never been there.
And by the way, while we're at it, Qatar should not ever host the World Cup. I mean, like, not any time in the near future. It's the same thing. Like, why are these events in certain places where they shouldn't be?
Scott Burnside, ESPN.com here on the latest edition of Hockey Today, the podcast. We hear from Ryan Murray of the Columbus Blue Jackets and Team North America, and Tyler Seguin, Dallas Stars scorer and member of Team Canada. You can find it under the Listen tab on your ESPN app.
So we have some breaking news on the subject we were just discussing in the prior segment here, gentlemen. A Brazilian police official is telling the Associated Press that American swimmer Ryan Lochte fabricated a story about being robbed at gunpoint in Rio de Janeiro. Max, your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, if he's coming clean now, that's good. Because, as I said in the previous segment, even if let's assume for a second he's fabricating something. Just because Brazil is facing a PR problem with these Olympics doesn't mean that he's not allowed to lie about made-up bad guys, you know, on his Instagram. That's fine. The problem is when you give statements to officials, police officials, law enforcement officials. Then they have a reason to detain you, even though it still doesn't sit well with me, but okay, they did win this PR battle. He's come clean. And by the way, Stephen A., even if they started to tell a lie, they didn't want to get into trouble, and then they told a lie to officials and maybe got themselves in more trouble, the sooner they come clean, the better. So it's good that it's resolved.
Well, I have nothing to add to what you said because you're right on the money with the exception of this. Lochte should be ashamed of himself, if indeed he did lie. You went to the Olympic to represent your country. You're supposed to, if you're representing your country, you're supposed to be as upstanding as you are. To fabricate a story to cover yourself, it probably ended up being way bigger than you imagined, but you still look like a damn liar, and you have now embarrassed yourself, and that's unfortunate.
You know what else? And I'm glad you brought that up because you're absolutely right about that. From the other point, I'm taking the pro-America. I just didn't like the fact that American citizens are detained even for a moment in a foreign. However, you're right. Brazil is fighting this PR battle. It's a legitimate one. They have real problems. What they don't need is a fabricated story speaking to some of the concerns that they're having now from a PR point of view. You're right. Lochte obviously did the wrong thing.
Want to go to our original story now that we were going to discuss with Christian McCaffrey? Let's get into it. So back in May, Stephen A., you reacted to Christian McCaffrey's comments in Sports Illustrated that many underestimate him because of the eye test.
If he were black, he would get talked about differently. He makes a very valid point. There's no reason for anybody to be up in arms for what he's saying. Christian McCaffrey deserves more respect, more recognition than he is receiving. Okay. And he's not receiving it because, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm saying it. He is a white guy that is not receiving it because of the color of his skin and the position that he plays.
Well, the Heisman runner-up told ESPN the magazine that Stephen A. rescued the discussion. Quote, "It was a relief. I couldn't have said it better." So Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson had similar comments, telling Bleacher Report that he thinks black quarterbacks are stereotyped. People think, quote, "Oh, he's a black quarterback. He must be dual threat." People throw around that word all the time. People have assumed that I have to run the ball before I can throw it most of my career. All the way back before high school, it's a stereotype put on me for a long time, because I'm African American and I'm a dual threat quarterback. Stephen A., what does this say about society?
It says that we still have a long way to go. And believe it or not, it says something that we as black people are very reluctant and reticent to recognize, but it's the absolute truth, that prejudice exists on both sides of the coin. What I would educate people about is that there's a difference between prejudice and racism. Racism essentially is when you inherently believe in a level of superiority or inferiority based on somebody's ethnicity, race, etc., etc. And I certainly have never met a black person who felt that way, that they were superior to somebody just because they're black. Obviously, our country has proven that there have been a bevy of white people who obviously think differently than that. But when it comes to prejudices, I think we're all tainted to some degree by that. Nobody's immune from it. Nobody can be absolved from it. And I think that in this particular situation, it proves the point. In the case of Deshaun Watson, he's absolutely right with what he said, considering the greatness that he has put on display, particularly last season. You know, the expectation that he is supposed to rely on his athleticism and his running ability to be as effective as he can be, because nobody can just judge him as being a pure quarterback, etc., who's just going to stand in the pocket and fling that football, even though this was a problem that existed with the likes of a Warren Moon, who debunked all of that and proved himself throughout his Hall of Fame career, first in the CFL and then in the NFL. It's still a stereotype that black quarterbacks have said they still battle. So Deshaun Watson isn't bringing anything new to the table. He's just validating what has reverberated throughout society for decades now. In the case of Christian McCaffrey, let me be the first to say what I said months ago. If he were white, he would be getting more attention. This man rushed for over
You mean if he was black?
If he was black, I'm sorry. If he were black, he would be getting more attention. As a white guy in the United States of America, this guy is actually being, diminished to some degree. Now, some people would use the excuse that I think if I remember correctly, is Jim Taylor or somebody like that, the last white running back to lead the NFL in rushing. Okay, so you might prognosticate, look forward and say, well, this guy at 6 feet, only 201 pounds, what is he going to be on the NFL level? Blah, 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 blah. Well, let's pump the brakes. He's not on the NFL level yet. He's in college, and he is not some average player. For collegiate purposes, Christian McCaffrey is a superstar on the collegiate level. He is a superstar at a superstar caliber institution from an academic perspective, that is Stanford. And I think to some degree he's being victimized because of that. He's being victimized because he's at Stanford. He's being victimized because he is white, playing the running back position. And I don't think it's fair. You rush for 2,019 yards. You average 6 yards a carry. In the Pac-12, you deserve hype. Now, he was a Heisman candidate, no doubt about it, but still in all, we weren't talking about him nearly as much. As a nation of sports nation, no pun intended, we were not talking about this kid nearly as much as we should. And the part that I think makes it even more egregious, that even though his father was a wide receiver. His father had NFL pedigree. His father proved that he belonged on the next level, playing with John Elway's and those boys. His father represented the NFL. So by virtue of that alone, to look at his son perform the way that this young man performed, we should be giving him more recognition. And I will say this to Christian McCaffrey. If you perform this year the way you performed last year, I personally promise you, we will be mentioning you a lot on this show because we will not ignore. I'm a fair-minded guy. And this guy, this white dude at Stanford, as a running back, deserves at this moment far more respect and adulation than he has received.
Not just a running back, he's a receiver too. I mean, when you think about him on the next level, you think, could he be LaDainian Thomas? Well, that's one of the greatest players of all time. But like, let's talk about a guy like Dave Meggett, one of these Weapon X type guys in the sense that he can help you in so many different ways. He can carry the ball a bunch of times.
You went real deep there. Who the hell remembers Dave Meggett? I know you do. He deserves to be remembered.
Giants,
but who the hell's thinking about it?
Giants. But the point is, Meggett could run the ball. He could catch the ball. He could return kicks. He could help you in a variety of ways. As a result, he was never going to lead the league in rushing or anything like that. But he was a Pro Bowler. He was that level player. And I look at McCaffrey, I think he could maybe do the same thing. Marcellus Wiley used to talk about this on Sports Nation and on our radio show about how in the running backs line, you know, and in the cornerbacks line, you see a white guy and the coaches will start giving him, you know, giving him the business. They'd be making fun of him and stuff like, oh boy, you know, because it's not just lazy thinking. The way we're wired is to make stereotypes. It's to make generalizations because it helps us process information quickly. It helps us understand the world.
Doesn't make it right, though.
Of course not. That can work against us, and it can lead to lazy thinking where people see Deshaun Watson and go, running back. No, he's a quarterback. Now, the irony in Deshaun Watson's case is he is a dual threat, you know, like, but he can do more than just run. He can obviously throw and complete passes and all that stuff, but he is a dual threat. And I also think that in terms of McCaffrey and the reception of him and the coverage of him, I think that tide will turn, Stephen A., because there's something about, just as we can generalize and make snap judgments and stereotype at times as a result, we also like it when we see someone who breaks stereotype. We like it when we see the white running back or cornerback because we don't see it all the time. And until recently, where now it's become commonplace, a black quarterback was something we discussed a lot because there weren't a lot of black quarterbacks. Not that there couldn't have been, but the reality was they weren't given the opportunity, etc. So when you saw one, you wanted to celebrate it. Look at that. Something that breaks a pernicious stereotype. That's a good thing. And I think that's going to start working for McCaffrey over time this season.
You're right. But the reason why it's so important, particularly on a show like this, to bring up Christian McCaffrey is because we never hesitate to point out unfairness. And it's usually aimed in the direction of minorities, whether it be African American or somebody else. We talk about Native Americans. We talk about African Americans. We'll talk about Latinos. It does not matter because we're for the underdog on First Take. Let's just call it what it is. And by and large, the sports world is that way in today's age as well. White hosts, black hosts, it don't matter. We've become a society where even though we say that we root for the underdog, we really, really have elevated that stature in today's day and age. So guess what? We're looking at Christian McCaffrey, and because he's white, and because he's at a pristine institution like Stanford, we're not viewing him as an underdog. But in this particular instance, he is an underdog. Because these kind of things, if we're willing to point out the liabilities, if we're willing to prognosticate what he won't be, and we're willing to do that ad nauseum, then what we're doing is taking those prejudices and leaping them on his shoulders and therefore making it hard for him. Now, there's a lot of black folks that'll be like, damn that, what's the problem? We got to deal with that every day. And that's right. But the problem is that if you want to alleviate that level of prejudice that's aimed in our direction, make sure we don't exercise it with somebody else. In the case of Christian McCaffrey, he does not deserve this. He deserves better than what we as a sports world have given him in the last year.
This is what I love about sports. The closest thing to a pure meritocracy in this country. I mean, it doesn't matter who your daddy is, how much money you have. If you can't hit the curveball, you can't stay in the major leagues. That's just the way it is. And just a word to the wise for those who would, for whatever reason, root against McCaffrey. McCaffrey. To me, so far, based on what I've seen, that's a losing proposition.
Yep.
That boy's good.
Listen. Ultimate compliment to the white guy known as Christian McCaffrey. You're a bad brother.
The Broncos and the 49ers are practicing together leading up to their game on Saturday night, and it was a rough practice on Wednesday for the Niners quarterbacks who were each picked off by the Broncos defense. The Broncos quarterback situation, not much better, but something that Broncos Executive Vice President of Football Operations and GM isn't worried about, telling USA Today, quote, "The good thing is we've got a good enough team around them. We'll be able to run the ball, and we won't throw them out there and say, you guys have to go win this. Do your job, make good decisions, and keep the team in position to win." And that's really all we're asking of that position right now. Max, which team has the worst quarterback situation?
The answer is actually the Miami Dolphins.
Really?
Yeah, because Tannehill last year, 2 years ago, their point differential was around 0. And they were 8-8, meaning they were fundamentally really an 8-8 type team. I was expecting Tannehill to take a step forward. They signed Ndamukong Suh. They're going to be a 10-win team maybe. But Tannehill never did take the step forward. Cameron Wake only got into 7 games, whatever. But that's the only team where the quarterback is pivotal, I think. When you look at Blaine Gabbert, they ain't going anywhere anyway. You look at St. Louis, L.A. now. Goff, he's a rookie. People know that's going to take some time. Mark Sanchez is no great shakes, but neither was Peyton last year, nor was Osweiler, and they managed to win the Super Bowl. And RG3, I think, is going to have a pretty good size. I think the people are sleeping on RG3 and what he's going to be able to do there, because he's shown in the past he could be a good quarterback. Tannehill is the guy on a team who could be something. Tannehill, because people consider him a real quarterback. He was 29th out of the 33 who qualified in QBR last year. He's a bad quarterback. We're expecting him to get better. He hasn't gotten better. His team is not bad. They could take a step forward with a real quarterback, and he's like the most pivotal kind of tipping point type player of all these quarterbacks we're talking about.
I don't blame you for saying that, but I respectfully disagree. Obviously, you have names like Geno Smith and people like that come to mind, but they don't count because they're not starting, and I don't anticipate that we'll see much of them. So we're not really including that. We're talking about guys that we know are going to be starting. Now, I have a dual category. I'm making up my own category.
Of course you are.
My own category. All right? And none of it is really, really talent. One is results. One is combination results psychology. When we talk about results, okay, the person that I would bring to mind is Matthew Stafford for the Detroit Lions.
Good one.
I'm sorry. You've been in the league since 2009. You've been to the playoffs twice with Calvin Johnson, Megatron, as your primary weapon, okay? And you can't win a playoff game? He has not won a playoff game ever. You've been in the NFL for 7 years. You have not won one single playoff game with Megatron as your wide receiver. He's not there any longer, so we'll see what happens there. That name comes to my mind. I'm thinking in terms of results. I'm thinking how god-awful they were at times. You have to remember, I mean, I'm looking at Matthew Stafford here. 2-8 as a starter 1 year, 1-2 at another one. He only played 3 games. He had a 10-6 season, 4-12, 7-9, had an 11-5 season, another 7-9, 42-51. Okay? This is what his record is with 0 playoff game victories and only 2 playoff
I'm with him, Molly.
Wait, I'm so confused right now. You had all 32 teams to choose from, right?
Yes.
Any with the worst quarterback situation, and you went Matthew Stafford and Ryan Tannehill. I just want to be clear for America.
Yes.
Who would you argue?
Point of order. I would have went with one of the situations that don't have a real quarterback.
Yeah, but San Francisco's not in a position even with a real quarterback.
We're going with guys we know have a quarterback situation and what you expect from them, because there's nothing to expect. The other name that I would bring up, of course, I'm going to reiterate my point because people thought I was joking or engaging in hyperbole. I was dead damn serious when I called Jay Cutler the worst quarterback in football. And it has nothing to do with his talent. We have to make up our minds whether or not leadership plays a role. Your ability to galvanize the troops and maximize the potential around you, because you're not just somebody who can fling the football and maneuver in the pocket, but you are a leader. Jay Cutler, to me, is a leaderless quarterback.
Quickly about Stafford.
I thought he would have went Osweiler.
Quickly about Stafford. Well, who's really expecting something from Osweiler? Quickly about Stafford. He has tier 1 quarterback talent. Always had. And sometimes he puts up tier 1 quarterback numbers. But when you watch him and look at the results on the field, they feel like empty calorie stats a lot of the time. And he is at best tier 2 quarterback, maybe tier 3. But the talent tells you tier 1. That's why
I'm not questioning the talent of Jay Cutler or Matthew Stafford. I'm questioning Jay Cutler's leadership and Matthew Stafford. I'm questioning his results based on the personnel he had around him.
Of course, the answer is Tannehill.
Forget Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz won. If last night's press conference is any indication of what we are in for on Saturday, it is going to be a serious show. Prior to the first fight, McGregor punched Diaz's hand during a pre-fight stare-down. Diaz's camp immediately jumped on stage and security was forced to break it up. Then fast forward to yesterday, McGregor, 30 minutes late to the press conference for UFC 202. Diaz decided to walk out, but he returned a bit later. Then the madness ensued.
Make no mistake, it will be a trilogy fight down the line. It won't be straight away, but we will do it 3 times, 100%.
Fuck your whole team, how about that?
Your whole team. Little crackhead. You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing. Get the f*** out of here! Get the f*** out of here! F*** you!
That's all right. Hey, Connor, don't throw those. Can't, Connor. That's a wrap. Get him out of here. Sorry, guys. See you Saturday.
Poor Dana. That is just
putting out fires.
So good. Always putting out fires. Max, you've been to quite a few press conferences. You want to jump in?
Listen.
What?
Listen.
That was so good, Stephen A. Come on.
Listen, Dana is right because you're throwing bottles and you don't want it to hit somebody, an innocent person, and they try to sue you or something. No, that's all he's saying. And you certainly don't want that. Connor's got to control himself. But and Diaz, too, because Diaz instigated it because he threw the bottle first. But be clear about something. This ain't just promotion when it comes to these guys. I mean, these guys are fighters. And you see the UFC, they go in there to hurt people. And Connor's coming, and Nate is waiting for him.
I can't wait.
It's irresponsible of me to say that I like that press conference. But I can't help it when it comes to Conor McGregor. I'll tell you something. For whatever reason, sometimes I'm put off by a certain attitude. Another guy could have the same attitude. For some reason, it's charming. So Bill Belichick won't answer questions. I think it's obnoxious. Popovich, I find it charming. I don't know why. Something about his charisma, whatever. Kaepernick would be sullen with the media at times. I'd be like, come on, Cap. Marshawn Lynch did it, charmed by it. Something about Marshawn Lynch. Same thing with Conor McGregor. Another person acts like this, I don't like it. He has a certain kind of charisma that is interesting to watch, even when he's doing stuff like that.
Rather, you cover a sport where, you know, you got to meet a weight limit and guys overweight by 2 pounds. You can't fight, or you can't, if you're fighting for you're not fighting for the title because they didn't meet the weight limit or whatever. Conor McGregor went from 145 to 170.
Oh, my opponent dropped out? Don't care. Let's fight.
Let's go, let's go. I'm going to go with Conor McGregor with the upset, and I think it is going to be.
Well, he was winning the first fight until he tapped out.
Well, I will say this. I'm hoping he wins because I want to see a third fight. I like it. Listen, for the purposes of the UFC, I do like Nate Diaz. I really do, but I just want to see. I'm a fan of Conor McGregor's. I think he tries to back it up.
Doesn't play though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm doing later today, guys?
What?
I'm going to, run home quick, get the popcorn ready, get nice and comfy on the couch, because at 2 p.m. Eastern, Brick is back.
Yeah.
It's going to be you have to watch.
Of course.
Please tell your wife, tell her to DVR that. It is going to be so fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It's like the only thing you are so.
Can't wait.
Are you excited or what?
I am excited.
Are you going to be nervous when you watch yourself? Be honest.
No, I'm not.
This is something new.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to be nervous.
You feel good about it?
Maurice Bernard takes care of me. I mean, when it comes to the soaps, Eric Braden for Young and the Restless, Victor Newman, and Maurice Bernard, Sonny Corinthos for General Hospital take good care of me. They're personal friends.
We are
going to
watch this tomorrow.
I'm not worried
We're
about
going to share the clip on the show.
Give them
I want to hear from you guys on Twitter. Let us know.
They school me. And Emmy is on the way someday.
And
Emmy is on the way someday.
All right, settle down. Appreciate you listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on ESPN2. Have a great day.
This weekend, the Mets continue a 10-game road trip in San Francisco, where they'll face Buster Posey and the Giants.
Gone! Buster Posey!
The Mets and Giants, Saturday at 3 Eastern and Sunday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.